especially those moments, and especially those moments when this campaign was at its lowest ebb, the African American community stood up again for me. You've always had my back, and I'll have yours.
Now, it wasn't that long ago that Biden was commemorating the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre, which till this very day, there are still 3 living survivors, all of whom have yet to receive reparations. All in their early hundreds, the 3 are unfortunately still battling it out in court to receive their just compensation 100 years later. Now, at the time of the commemoration, it was revealed that Biden told the Congressional Black Caucus that if you're expecting Congress to pass H.R. 40, which is simply a bill to study reparations, mind you, he told the CBC, don't hold your breath. And you can find that in this article here titled, Biden Privately Tells Lawmakers Not to Expect Much on Reparations Legislation. Now, I just want to read one paragraph from that article for you real quickly. As a candidate, Biden said he supported a commission on reparations, but the administration has yet to endorse the actual bill. After his speech Tuesday, the president met with the members of the Congressional Black Caucus who brought up the need for H.R. 40, which is named after the 40 acres and a mule promise that now symbolizes the lack of support formerly enslaved people received from the federal government. According to those involved in the conversations, Biden let them down gently. Now, only 6 months into his presidency, Biden told Black Americans who were seeking reparations to kick rocks, but then turns around and agrees to pay climate reparations to poor countries and communities across the world for climate damages. Yes, Biden is going to pay poor communities all across the world climate reparations because they're experiencing bad weather. In a first, rich countries agreed to pay climate damages in poor nations. After 30 years of deadlock, a new UN climate agreement aims to pay developing countries for loss and damages caused by global warming, but huge questions remain about how it would work. So Biden doesn't even know how this is going to work, but he agreed to paying it. Negotiations from nearly 200 countries concluded 2 weeks of talks early Sunday, in which their main achievement was agreeing to establish a fund that would help poor, vulnerable countries cope with climate disasters made worse by the pollution spewed by wealthy nations that is dangerously heating the planet. The decision regarding payments for climate damages marked a breakthrough on one of the most contentious issues at United Nations climate negotiations. For more than 3 decades, developing nations have pressed for loss and damage money, asking rich industrialized countries to provide compensation for the cost of destructive storms, heat waves, and droughts fueled by global warming. Okay, so Black Americans have been petitioning the United States government since 1865 to receive reparations for chattel slavery and Jim Crow, and has yet to receive a dime. But after only 30 years, poor communities across the world will receive reparations for experiencing bad weather. Okay, duly noted. But the United States and other wealthy countries had long blocked the idea for fear that they could be held legally liable for the greenhouse gas emissions that are driving climate change. The agreement hammered out in this Red Sea resort town says nations cannot be held legally liable for payments. The deal calls for a committee with representatives from 24 countries to work over the next year to figure out exactly what form the fund should take, which countries should contribute, and where the money should go. Many other details are still to be determined. Once again, Biden doesn't even know how this is going to work. Literally nobody does, but he agreed to pay it. Developing nations, largely from Asia, Africa, Latin America, the Caribbean, and South Pacific, fought first to place the Loss and Damage Fund on the formal agenda for the 2-week summit. They made it clear that a summit held on the African continent that ended without addressing loss and damage would be seen as a moral failure. The announcement offers hope to vulnerable communities all over the world who are fighting for their survival from climate stress, said Sherry Rahman, Pakistan's Minister of Climate Change, and gives some credibility to the COP process. I just have to reiterate, America is willing to pay reparations to vulnerable communities in poor countries around the world, but won't pay reparations to the descendants of American slavery to correct 246 years of chattel slavery, followed by another 100 years of political and economic violence by way of Jim Crow and black codes. Pakistan, which shepherded a group of 134 developing nations pushing for loss and damage payments, provided a fresh reminder of the destructive forces of climate change. Over the summer, Pakistan suffered devastating flooding that scientists say was made worse by global warming, resulting in more than 1,500 deaths, plunging 1/3 of the country underwater and causing $30 billion in damages, even as Pakistan contributes less than 1% of the world's planet warming emissions. As the summit was nearing an end, the European Union consented to the idea of a loss and damage fund, though it insisted that any aid should be focused on the most vulnerable nations, and that aid might include a wide variety of options, such as new insurance programs, in addition to direct payments. I'm going to read that last part again. In addition to direct payments. Do you see how reparations always include direct cash payments? As I've stated on this channel multiple times, any conversation surrounding reparations that does not include direct payments is an illegitimate conversation. And you can see here as clear as day that if you're not talking about direct payments, then you're not talking about reparations at all. That left the United States, which has pumped more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere than any nation in history, as the last big holdout. By Saturday, as talks stretched into overtime, American officials said they would accept a loss and damage fund, breaking the logjam. While American diplomats agreed to a fund, money must be appropriated by Congress. Last year, the Biden administration sought $2.5 billion in climate finances, but secured just $1 billion, and that was when the Democrats controlled both chambers, with Republicans, who largely oppose climate aid, set to take over the House in January. The prospects of Congress approving an entirely new pot of money for loss and damages appear dim. Sending U.S. taxpayer dollars to a UN-sponsored green slush fund is completely misguided, said Senator John Barrasso, Republican of Wyoming. The Biden administration should focus on lowering spending at home, not shipping money to the UN for new climate deals. Innovation, not reparations, is the key to fighting climate change. And I 100% agree. In no way, shape, form, or fashion should the Biden administration be paying reparations to poor countries because of bad weather. There was a brewing debate over what to call the new fund. Developing nations considered it compensation, and climate activists often refer to it as reparations. But diplomats, particularly the Americans, called the money loss and damage resources. Look at how the U.S. government plays with words. This is why language and wording plays such a critical role in legislation. But in this particular situation, the Biden administration will tell you, hey, we're not paying reparations to these poor nations. This is loss and damages resources. In addition to a loss and damage fund, developing nations use the climate talks to push reforms at two of the world's biggest lending institutions, the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. The agreement reached at Sharm el-Sheikh broaches the possibility of both institutions paying into the loss and damage fund. Heavy debt is one of the main obstacles developing countries face in being able to respond adequately to climate-driven crises, both immediate and long-term. Now, what I want everybody to remember in closing is that these climate reparations would not be possible without Joe Biden's cosign. Now, let's go back to this top paragraph here that I have highlighted, which states that left the United States, which pumped more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere than any nation in history, as the last big holdout. By Saturday, as talks stretched into overtime, American officials said that they would accept a loss and damage fund, breaking the log jam. If Biden doesn't co-sign this, these reparations don't happen. He'll co-sign reparations, cash payments for poor communities across the world, but won't co-sign not even a bill to study reparations for the descendants of American slavery in the United States.
Especially those moments, and especially for those moments when this campaign was at its lowest ebb, the African American community stood up again for me. You've always had my back, and I'll have yours.
And with all that being said, that does it for today's video. So please make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the bell notification next to the subscribe button so you can be notified whenever I release a new video. All social media links will be pinned in the comment section below. And also, please make sure you text tdhiphop to number 33222. That's tdhiphop to number 33222. That way you'll get a text notification whenever I release a new video, but it also serves as an insurance plan for myself. So in case YouTube ever gives me the axe, I'll be able to send you a direct link to where you can find me next. And last but certainly not least, for those of you who have a love and appreciation for the work that I put in on this channel, the #1 way you can show your support is through Patreon. For only $3 a month, that will help put me in position to take TD Hip Hop Media off of YouTube. Remember, the goal is not to grow big on YouTube, but to grow independent of YouTube. And for those of you who have issues with joining Patreon, you can also hit the join button that's next to the subscribe button, and that way you can become an official channel member for as little as $3 a month as well. And lastly, if you haven't already, please make sure you join the emailing list. There is no way that I can go independent of YouTube if I cannot take the audience with me. And the link to that will be pinned in the comment section as well. Thank you for your time, and until the next video, peace.